Mr. George M. Coombs, the very one we're speaking of, at 6 Pleasant Street. And this was sort of fascinating because the day after I looked that up, I was driving down Pleasant Street in search of this, and it still exists right there. It's sort of discreetly held back from the street and East Avenue, and sort of, I think there's either a house or a commercial building in front of it. You'd never know it was there, but there are drawings that exist in the archives of the house, and there's still some of the character that you can witness, and some of the trim right from those drawings. Some of it has been altered over time, but it's still there. Also, the golf block, which again has seen a lot of different tenants over the years, and the Court Street Fire Station, 1879. So this is actually a great period. There's many more works. These are the ones from Androscoggin County, and these are more I didn't study many of the houses. Probably the only house we'll see tonight was the Senator Fry house. So this right here is the Oddfellows block, and Coombs is credited with this, again, while working with Stevenson Coombs. And there's actually how it was rendered at the time, and it's a fascinating study of watercolor, really. The preferred method of Coombs was watercolor. This is his work, and it's read a little bit about it here. The Oddfellows block at 182 to 190 Lisbon Street is a deftly conceived, fanciful Victorian, and there's a bit of redundancy there because I think you could probably use one or the other, work that draws from Italian influences and away from the high style of the Second Empire. Its noteworthy characteristics... I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Its noteworthy characteristics are the enlivened pattern of its principal facade, and again, it's very active visually, due in some part to the alternating use of granite and brick, and so you have this multicolor or polychromic treatment. You also have a lot of shadow that's even rendered in the drawing. That's why this is actually quite lovely. Where you actually see there are reliefs in the pilasters here. There's sort of a dental work, if you will, at the top, at the cornice line. And so there's the beginnings of a very enlivened and sort of fussy, if you will, almost exterior. There's a strong pull away for a symmetric arrangement. This is sort of an asymmetric in sort of a balanced point of view, where the rhythm here is 2, 3, 1, 3, and so again it's balanced in the sort of entomological term of symmetric, but in terms of our strict understanding of left-right balance, it's not. The broad bracketed root cornice further enhances this as the primary support bracket visually extends from the pilasters, and so that rhythm is read right through with those brackets that extend right up from the pilasters and support the roof line. It's an eclectic free play of styles that, and we see even the pointed arches in here, sort of reference to Gothic architecture. That's what's wonderful about the Victorian period. That you could combine anything, and it seemed to work. The Goff block again uses some of this, although it's far more restrained than the Oddfellows block. We do have a bit of pattern treatment on the exterior, and I think I've got another one that we can see where Coombs is now playing with patterned brick, and so he actually recesses brick and then pulls brick out, and you have a depth that's read through there. It also allows the pilasters to read up through, and so you have a very strong vertical arrangement to that as well. Again, a bracketed broad cornice at the top, and this one falls in a suit where the ground floor was used for commerce, and I believe it's Getchell's drugstore in both images, so you're going back some time. The this right here being the fire station on 4th Street. I think we almost all recognize that. And there's a similar treatment, again, that we just saw on the golf block as well, where we've got that alternating depth of the brick in the spandrels of those windows. Although, and again, this it doesn't have that polychromic treatment that the Oddfellows block does, but probably more in line with the Goff block in some of the treatment. It's been altered, of course, today somewhat. It's interesting to note where the medallion here used to be in line with what was probably the stair and the entrance right there, and so this has been relocated down here. Again, this is a more of a utilitarian structure. It's a firehouse, and so it's responding more to internal function than it would on the exterior in terms of any sense of symmetry. But the adaptations on the lower level have brought in the doors to some degree, and then there's, I think, an applied brick treatment that loses a sense of what was happening at the top, and so it sort of stops and dies there. And where we had the granite sills and lintels, those have no longer carried through on the bottom, and so you get kind of a half remaining relic of Mr. Coombs' work of the time. Upon the death of Stevens in 1880, and with a significant body of work, mature work in his portfolio, George Millard Coombs establishes the firm under his own name, and it was a time of great prosperity for the area, and the wealthy had an interest in demonstrating their industrial fortunes in all manner of good style and taste. In Lewiston, there was little competition for these commissions. There was one other architect at the time, Jefferson Colburn, practicing in the area, and it was widely known that he was not quite as gifted or skilled in architecture or in styling as Mr. Coombs. Colburn's work remains today in the Osgood building at 129 Lisbon Street and the Healy Asylum on Ash Street. But there's also made mention that at this time, even though there were few architects practicing in the area, there was still competition for the really good stuff from Boston, which, again, still survives to this day, as I can attest to. At the latter half of the 19th century saw a shifting in landscapes in the world of architecture brought about by the dissemination of many pattern books. And so it's known that Mr. Coombs probably had access to those as well. There was also a building confidence in the nation, which meant that it no longer needed to import European culture, but began to look inward. Architects at this time began selecting freely from various styles, choosing fashions to match their clients' interests. They would often mix from different periods and styles in the same work, and we've already seen an example of that. The years of 1880 to 1896 are arguably one of the most prolific and important periods in the firm's history. It's during this time that Coombs is credited with more than 150 houses of varying size, style, and complexity. Many of these homes still exist in the area today, and it would be fascinating. I don't know if anyone's done an inventory of exactly the number of houses from the firm that still exist in the area. It would be worth the study because it's just fascinating to go through and read, and many of them still do exist in the downtowns of the two areas. Again, I'll go through a list quickly here of some of these works in this period of 16 or so years. The Dominican block down on Lincoln Street, the Blake and Ham House on Main Street, the Eric Cushman House on Madison Street in Auburn, the Dingley School on Oak Street, St. Peter's School and on Bates Street, the Mechanics Savings Bank block in Auburn, the Bates College Hedge Laboratory, the Lewiston City Hall. There was a proposal by the firm of Coombs at the time. It wasn't chosen. The Orrin Cheney House on Fry Street, the Oak Street School on Oak Street in Lewiston, Callahan Block on Lisbon Street, the Central Maine Hospital, we all know well, the Cora Temple Block, not the Cora Shrine Temple, but the Cora Temple Block on Lisbon Street, the Peck's Department Store on Main Street as well.